oh my god, Luca is nothing like the Little Mermaid.
No, it's not.
Because my dad literally said, why is Luca like the Little Mermaid?
He said that?
Yes.
Wait, if you think about it, you're right. If you think about it.
And then I had to tell him that, like, oh, this is from Italy based on lagoon monsters and not half human, half mermaid people.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he literally said that. He didn't watch it yet. He only knows the trailer, and he knows that it's on Disney+.
That's so interesting. Like the Little Mermaid.
Yeah, it's like, why is Luca like the Little Mermaid? Hello, everyone. I am Ricky, one half of the Streaming Buds.
And I'm Nat, the other half of the Streaming Buds.
And we are here this week to discuss our initial thoughts of the latest offering from Pixar, Luca. As it's still a new release, instead of a normal review, this episode of the Streaming Buds will be a relaxed discussion with me and my co-host, Nat. That being said, this will also be a heavy spoiler discussion of the film if you haven't watched it on Disney Plus yet. You have been warned. Nat, would you like to begin with what you think about Luca first to start things out with?
Pixar has done it again, folks. It just seems like they can't miss. Like, Pixar is just so good. And they don't disappoint with this movie. I really loved it. With a good number of Pixar movies nowadays, we see a lot of representation, and I absolutely love that. In this movie, we have a lot of, like, Italian references. A lot of the characters, well, all of them pretty much speak some sort of Italian at some point. And it's just so interesting. I don't know, just putting that into context. It's like you're learning a new language as you're watching these movies. And what makes me think of this is Coco or...
So, yes, because so would be because of African-American representation. And it was actually the first Pixar movie to do so.
100%. So we get, like, just so much representation. And I just love it. I love it. But yeah, that's, like, the very first thing that comes to mind because this is set in Italian Riviera. They're speaking Italian. There's just so much culture in this movie. And, you know, the same goes for Soul and Coco and a lot of Pixar movies. Ricky, what about you? What are your initial thoughts?
My really initial thoughts of this movie is, well, one, I love it. Pixar have done it again. They made a film that I initially love, and hopefully it sticks that way. So far, all of their films have done that. I still remember So, even though I haven't seen it recently, I still remember liking it, and I still remember, like, having a good feeling out of it, even if, like, that little ending that some people really wanted the main character to die. I like that he lived. Anyway, with Luca, I really enjoyed the childhood aspect of the film. It's because I feel that Pixar has always been doing a great job at children representation and, like, having a mindset of a child. We know, like, Toy Story with Andy, and, like, toys are basically his imagination. Or you could take it as that way. You don't have to. Or, like, Boo literally having, like, a giant, like, jock babysitter. Or even, like, with one of the recent outings, Coco, where you have this Hispanic kid in Mexico go to the land of the dead. And it's weird to think that this is their first outing actually having kids interact with each other as friends. I love the execution of it. It just reminds me of my day, like finding your first best friend or your first best friend and actually spending the summer with them and getting to know them. And then, like, yeah, I really love it. It just brought me back. And that's what I first got from Luca. And yeah, let's talk more about it. Natalie, what is the most memorable part of Luca that you can think of?
I'm going to go with the very first scene that comes to mind. And again, spoilers, guys, so please, I'm about to spoil something. It's one of the very last scenes where Luca is leaving with Julia to go to Genova, go to the school with her. And he's, like, leaving Alberto. And it's, like, such an emotional moment because the two of them, you know, they're sea monsters. They came to this new land. They both journeyed the town together and all this stuff. And they've been through so much. This is the moment where they're going their separate ways. They're going to live their own lives within this human world. And Alberto's staying with Julia's dad in the Riviera. And like I said, Luca's going with Julia to the school. So they're both kind of living their dreams. And it's just such an emotional moment when they're saying bye. That's the one that sticks to me. And Luca goes on the train's like leaving, but then Alberto's running after the train. It's a classic kind of shot there. And it just shows like how close they are. And it was just so like, I just felt it, you know? And even like the shot when like Luca's waving bye to him or looking at him and they're turning into the sea monsters because it's raining that day. And they're like, Luca's looking like out into the ocean, looking back at the island, all the memories come flooding back. It's a lot. And yeah, that has to be my favorite scene. What about you, Ricky?
I would have to say my favorite scene is a tie between a lot of different scenes because there was just so many things. My favorite would, of course, have to be the very end. That kind of ties with what Natalie was saying, but like just before that, with the climax of, well, the entire film, you kind of had this little danger of Luca and Alberto having this sense of danger from getting wet. And that's kind of hard when it's literally a coast town, literally surrounded by water. And not to mention, it rains probably every other day. So they have to, because they're sea monsters. You guys knew this, I hope, unless you just knew nothing of Luca at all. Like you didn't even watch trailers, as my dad kind of even knew that it was basically from human to, well, sea monster to human type of thing. But yeah, so that was the danger. And like they also have an interesting mechanic, which leads to the very climax at the town that really hates sea monsters figure out, hey, these two kids are monsters that we hate and have a whole bike tradition over for a competition. And then most of the town don't care. Like, it's so funny. And like, the random two old ladies who were just looking at Luca and Alberto the entire time and kind of like judging them or like just looking out. They just like took away their umbrella and then turns out they're sea monsters as well, which is like, wow. I kind of wish like it's also a no-brainer because again, they literally live right by the town. So it's like, yeah, of course some of them visit there. And then also, the grandmother, turns out she probably is friends with these ladies because, like, at the very end, it's like, oh, yeah, like, Luca's parents are like, Mom, you're here? It's like, yeah, I come here every now and then.
so iconic. An unproblematic queen.
Yeah, exactly. And I also love that Julia's father doesn't care. Even though, like, obviously it's very much hinted about, like, his tragic life with monsters and stuff. Like, he makes it very apparent that he doesn't like sea monsters. But also, he got to know these kids. And he understand that they're kids. Like, they're not monsters. They won't attack anybody. And that is kind of like he became my, oh, is he going to be the big bad? Like, is he going to be the twist villain? To, oh, I like that this character exists. Also, the villain is pathetic, and I love it because Pixar don't need twist villains. Animated movies are so abundantly saturated with twist villains that it was fun to, like, the little villain of the movie was that a little villain of the movie. There was, like, barely any stakes other than them, like the town finding out the sea monsters. And I really like that it's not another Coco situation. That is just, even though I like the twist villain there, it worked well. I was kind of scared that Pixar was going to use that as an excuse, like, oh, people like this, let's do it again. So yeah, that's my favorite moment, is kind of like the end and the town like accepting Luca and then the parents kind of having a home there. That was nice too. Like, it just makes sense.
So kind of like the culmination of everything that's been set in the movie.
Yes, precisely. It makes the journey feel a lot better. Yeah, just like the Coco end as well, where it just sets in stone the motion and everything kind of feels like a nice puzzle, especially since the film was a back-to-back blast. Like, even when they cut away to the parents, which I would get to soon, their side story doesn't even feel like a side story because they're just trying to find Luca. And that's very rare in movies, to make a side story matter.
Indeed it is. Now I kind of want to segue like into something kind of different, but kind of related to this. Were there any scenes that really surprised you? You can start, Ricky. I have one that's in my mind right now. And maybe we're thinking of the same one. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, really, this isn't more than less than a surprise, but a revelation that is like hinted throughout the film, and that is Julia's the reason why Julia is actually going to school there is because her mother actually lives there. And at first I thought it was just a normal Disney trope of, oh, her mother's dead. And it's like, no, her parents are separated. And it was actually pretty heartwarming at the very end to actually see the story plays out as well. And that also surprised me that like they were going to do that, because so often, especially with like Disney related content, is they milk things to a point where they don't have a complete story. And I like that Pixar still does that. They're not teasing anybody with a sequel with Luca, because this feels like a beginning to end story of a boy's exploration of the world and having a summer with his best friends and moving on from that, because then you could see, oh, it becomes winter in one of those like thing. Also, final thing that surprised me, because these are just little niche nuggets that isn't really specifically told to you. Yeah. And that is that the film takes place in the same decade as the moon landing.
I think I know why you think that, because there's that one scene where they're outside, yes, but there's a TV playing. I didn't know what that was. It just looked old.
Yes, and that makes perfect sense, because, like, again, motor vehicles exist in this period, so it doesn't take place beforehand because the Vesta exists, like the moped. And so, okay, that exists, and record players exist, which that means radio exists. So it's like, what century are we in?
There was another part, like right in the beginning, where the mom's talking about, oh, when we used to like see boats every like couple days, and they used to have paddles and blah blah blah. So that's where I started getting like, what time period is this? Like, or how long do these like creatures live and stuff like that?
Yeah, I also really like that it doesn't give you a general time period, and I also like that about the first Incredibles movie as well, because they just kind of had little technology and gadgets, and then you could put in together, oh, it's from the 50s. Is this thing taking place today and then? Probably not. But yeah, like if you're a really big fan on the Pixar Theory, and I know Natalie is.
I was just about to jump in with that. We're on the same wavelength.
Yes, that you could kind of just put it together and realize, oh, this is where it lands on the theory. But I just found it a nice little touch, because they didn't have, like, they didn't have to like give us a time frame. They could have just made it up in a little pocket wood, but they did, and that was nice. So those were the things that surprised me. Nat, what about you?
I was just going to mention the scene where they first discover that they're the sea monsters. Because Alberto and Luca, they're like arguing about like what they're gonna do after like the race and all this stuff. Because Alberto and Luca were supposed to go travel the world together with their Vespa, or stuff like that. And Luca, after spending some time with Julia, he wants to like go to the school with her in Genova after summer. And so they're arguing about what they're going to be doing, like, oh, let's stay together, and like all this stuff. And I'm not going to say the whole scene because it's a lot, but basically Alberto like reveals to Julia that he's a sea monster. And at that exact same time, Hercules coming in with his crowd, because they're hunting for sea monsters, and they see Alberto as a sea creature. And they're all kind of just around there, like just gathered together. And Luca in a split second, he's like, sea monster, and he's like pointing at Alberto. And I was like, oh my gosh, he just betrayed his first like friend. And it was just so shocking to me. I was like, why would you do that? Like, come on. And Alberto was so like heartbroken. And then like he runs away. And there's just like this silence and stuff, especially when like Luca and Julia go back to the house with Julia's dad and all that. So that's the one that really shocked me. I was like, oh my gosh, what?
I have to say, when you said surprise, I didn't think that you meant OMG shocked. That moment also,
no worries.
That moment also touched me, but I think I more or less expected, because I watched a lot of movies, especially like all of the Pixar movies, so I know that there's gonna be a hammer on the table thunk where the conflict happened, because a movie cannot always be happy good movies, and then wouldn't be an interesting moment.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I've seen all the Pixar movies too, and there's always that moment where like there's a bunch of conflict going on, and you know, every movie needs some sort of conflict, because then what are we watching, you know? So as the conflict between Alberto and Luca was like increasing, you know, I was waiting for something to happen. And did I ever think that they would show themselves as sea creatures? Honestly, I don't know. I should have expected it, but for some reason I didn't really expect it. But when they did it, when it first happened, it was still, you know, it got the point across, basically. It was really good. Done really well.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I kind of expected that once they showed the gimmick that, like, oh, water, immediately, I'm now a monster. I kind of expected that eventually they have to show Julia, well, at least Julia, that they're sea monsters, because they're friends, or they grew a friendship between them. The three of them. So I kind of was expecting it, but I was also surprised the way they done it. And it was actually really well done. It was relatable, that like how they did it, because this is something that kids do. And it is understandable for Luca that he done it, because he got mad. Like, he more or less felt kind of betrayed as well, like on his perspective, because you say things in the moment as kids, and you kind of don't realize or like put two together that it felt like a lifelong promise. And also, Alberto betrayed as well, because he doesn't have, like, as it was revealed, he doesn't have anybody else in his life. So Luca was the first interaction that he had in a while with anybody. He gained a close relationship of it, that he treated him as another family member. Suddenly, his best friend has the revelation, I want to leave, or I want to do something else. And so that, like, both of the words kind of clashed in what their ambitions is. And so when that surprise happened, I also felt that, because, like, again, just growing up, and that's something that you have to learn. Friendship is something you have to learn as you grow older. And that was really a nice touch to it all.
I want to go back to the Pixar theory for just a little bit. I was trying to think about where this was going to fit on the theory. And if you guys don't know the theory, it's a lot. Go ahead and check out. There's a lot of videos like on the internet about it. But I was thinking, like, after even just seeing the trailer, I was like, okay, they're humans. Well, no, they're not humans. They're sea creatures who can look like humans. So on like the timeline, I was thinking that it was like sometime after WALL-E, but before Monsters Inc. Because in the theory, it says that because of this like radioactivity that's going on Earth, the humans become monsters. And like Luca and Alberto are like sea creatures, but they're also like, they can turn into humans. So that's what I'm thinking right now. What about you, Ricky? What are you thinking?
I think it's a cool concept until Pixar themselves confirm that it exists.
They have not, and I don't think they ever will, which is okay with me. But I really like tinkering with it and, you know, just figuring it out.
Yeah, I was about to say, until Pixar themselves confirm it, I am not going to believe it concrete. It's a fun thought experiment. It is a fun thing to look at, like, but some movies don't make sense, but others, it makes you question, are they into it? Like, do they know that this exists? And I just look on the timeline really quick. Incredibles 2 takes place about 1962, while the moon landing happened about 1969. So if you believe that the whole end credit sequence is canon, then it does line up that Luca, the events of Luca, takes place shortly after Incredibles, the first one and the second one, as those films are back to back. So you could hypothetically say that the species of people, the species of
Like sea creatures. Yeah.
Yes, that's the thing. The species of sea creatures kind of evolved into not becoming human because they no longer needed to be human, as they no longer needed to hide from them. So you could hypothetically say that the monster species evolved from the mer people, as they kind of learn how to keep form when the events of Wall-E eventually happened. Because Wall-E is a apocalyptic area and it never shows you that there isn't water. So technically, they could still be just chilling out. That's a whole leap. And I think the Super Carlin brothers could do a better job than I just thought of. But I just watched the film, and that's my initial thoughts of it. As mentioned, I don't believe it, but I am a fan, and I always listen to their videos about the Pixar Theory.
No, I think you explained it pretty well, Ricky, like what you were thinking. I mean, I don't really like believe it 100% either. I just really like reading about it, seeing how it develops as more movies come along. And I can definitely see what you're saying, like where it is in the timeline. I also wanted to go back to the end credits for a second there because you mentioned it and it just reminded me of something. Like you said, Julia's mom is only shown in the credits, not even in the actual movie. So like,
yes,
guys, please watch the credits. There's going to be something. Gotta be. At least in a lot of movies nowadays I've seen.
I wouldn't be surprised if Pixar makes a little short, as they've been doing with a lot of other movies. Like they recently did it with 22 on Disney Plus of her interaction before they met Joe. And it was a very fun short as somebody who watched it. So if they have a little short about Luca exploring the human world, that would be fun. Now, Natalie, what was your favorite little detail in the background? Because this movie had a lot of details that you could miss.
Are you talking about like something in the background or like
just like small little moment? Like just small. What's your favorite small little moment of the film?
Might have to think about this for a bit. It's kind of hard.
I could go first.
Yes, please go first. Yes.
Okay. My favorite small little moment has to be like the parents' side story, because it really don't matter. Like just like the interactions with the real world, because they obviously they somehow get close, and it just cut away at like the perfect time of like there's a comedic thing. I think of the little moment has to be the mom character where she just starts she kicked a ball at a child, and the child just goes in the fountain, and then she gets an idea and then start just pushing in other children in there. And it's a small scene, but it's a very beautiful one. And then later, it could have just been a cutaway thing, not even meaning to the plot. But then later, the mom ran out of children to put in the pond. So it's just this little funny thing that they go back to, because it's oh, I don't know where Lucas is now. I did this to everyone. It's so yeah, that was my favorite little fun moment. How about you, Natalie?
So for me, after some thought, I've been thinking about what kind of scene or small moment comes to mind. It's towards the beginning where Alberto and Luca are doing all those test runs with the Vespa, their Vespa, quote unquote. And it's the animation, really, just the slow motion of them going in the air, and then they're going to the stars, which they're calling anchovies because they think they're anchovies, and then they think the moon's some big fish, whatever. But just that whole scene was so beautiful. I will also say the beginning music and the ending music really put me in a great mindset. I really loved that. It was just so good. I love Pixar. Just so good.
Yeah, definitely the little anchovies and then like the big fish. It's very funny because that's also something that just kids would say, but it makes sense because they're sea monsters and fish is something all they know mostly. So it just is a nice little detail about like what would kids who don't really go to school, what would they think stars are? And that also brought me back to like the little drawing of Luca looking at the moon landing with Julia, just like, oh, he's on the big fish. Nat, any closing thoughts?
I will just say, Luca did not disappoint. Go watch it, guys, if you have not already. Me and Ricky, we watched it on the day of, and it was amazing. We couldn't wait for it, so you guys shouldn't either. What about you, Ricky? Any final thoughts?
My final thought is I can't wait to watch this movie again with my parents and to see if it holds up because currently, right now, I love it for all of the reasons we discussed and more that we could talk about in a future full-on review.
Definitely. And these were our initial thoughts on Disney Pixar's Luca. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. This was the Streamin' Buds. I'm Nat.
And I'm Ricky. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at The Streaming Buds. And I repeat, The Streaming Buds. And if you like this episode, hit like, comment, and subscribe. See you next time.